Hello and welcome to Reanimated, folks. This is the podcast about all things zombie undead, otherwise moldering in the grave. My name is Stuart. I'm one of your hosts. I'm in California on the western coast of the United States, and joining us from the eastern side of the United States is H.A. Conrad. Hello.
Hello.
How are you? How's COVID treating you? You okay?
I'm definitely on the upswing, so that's good. The fatigue is for reals, but that was the same the last time I had it, so I'm not really surprised about that. But
Stairs,
definitely,
man. Stairs are
yep,
tough.
they are hard. But definitely feeling a lot better, so that's good. Can't complain. It's, on the other side, so
Did you basically like just stay working but remotely while the whole
yep,
time you had COVID?
yep, pretty much.
It's funny. It's funny how I remember doing the same thing when I had COVID last year. It's like, I think I took one day off.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, there was just so much going on and I had just been on vacation, so a little hard to be out for another week. And it's not like, I mean, I was pretty bad on Sunday, but like that was, I would say, the worst of it. So it wasn't, I was on a bunch of Zooms and I think a few of those were kind of challenging. But
Mm-hmm.
not there wasn't anything, it wasn't like I couldn't work, and quite frankly, it helped distract from feeling so miserable to some extent. So that was probably a positive thing.
Well, I'm glad you're on the mend. Because we need you. We need you on this wall
Mhm.
today to talk about Brain Freeze, the 2021 Canadian film.
Yeah, I definitely have some brain freeze happening right now for sure.
Yeah.
No question.
Uh,
So
I
forgive me.
well, I'm sure with your brain freeze, you probably don't have the answers to some of my questions about this production. You're usually my go-to,
Yeah,
but
I didn't do a ton. I'll own up, but yeah.
I'm not sure. This feels like a passion project by one Julien Nafo, the writer, director, and musical coordinator
I
of this
know, I know.
film. Um, but so yeah, this is a pretty hokey conceit for a zombie movie, but it's still because we're genre fans. I still had a good time watching it. Um, and it has the metaphor and everything going for it too. So it kind of, at least for me, worked on at least one level. A decent cast.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that overall there were some good things about it. It definitely there was some very cheesy things going on and certainly some plot holes, but you know, it it was what it was and it tried to kind of be a sort of commentary, I guess, on class warfare. But I don't know that it fully succeeded in that. I don't know. A few things to talk about in this. So do you wanna set up with the sort of table setting with this?
Um, well, our first scene, our cold open, if you will, they get right to it. It's like dudes in biohazard suits spraying green liquid, I guess, or liquid with green bits in it on a field, and then saying, "Chalk up another win for." Is it Biotech M?
Yeah,
Is that the name
something
of the
like that.
company? They're setting up some scientific amorality, some corporate greed. And
Right.
then we as we meet other characters, we see other sides of the coin, as it were.
Yeah, and I mean I think that the part that I was kind of like a little bored or kind of like yawny by was the idea that the sort of thing that was tying a lot together where it's trying to give you some exposition and some idea of certain things that are happening is the kind of tropey radio host that is doing all this commentary. So basically is just sort of being like, oh, those rich folks out on Peacock Island want to golf during the winter. Like it seemed a little bit sloppy in terms of boring in terms of like giving the background of where we were at. Um and that guy is present throughout the entire show or
Yeah,
throughout the entire movie. And I don't know that it was used as well as it could have been. Like they have him interspersed in a couple of different parts in this. And so
It
I
feels
don't
like
know.
everybody on the cast ends up talking to him at one point or
Right. And
another.
but I don't know that that makes total sense, but what did you think of him?
Well, he's he's supposed to be a conservative radio personality. He doesn't make any he doesn't hide his bias at all when he's talking. He seems to think that like it was a little weird. Like in a way, he wasn't as bad as some versions of that could have been.
Right.
But there was no like story arc for his character. In the
No,
end, you
that's
see him listening to the minister that I assume it's the minister that he's been kind of hard with on the phone. The minister is basically expositioning how he has started the new world order, and this radio DJ doesn't seem to be picking up on any of that, and he's just kind of like looking at the recording blankly. So I kind of wanted him to have a comeuppance because of his bad
yeah.
takes on the radio, but
Or
he never seemed to get one. So
or I wanted some kind of like mirror parallel. So they have the prime minister pick up the cup that has the company logo on, and I was hoping to have the radio host do that, and maybe he did.
no,
I don't think he did. I never saw him
he had like
throughout
energy
any.
drinks around all
Yeah,
over his desk. Yeah,
I didn't see any like corporate swag related to this company, but I thought that that's where they were that honestly that's where I thought they were going with this, is that that's what would tie together, was that he was actually an agent of the corporation, and that this was a coordinated um protocol that they had put together, that he was actually working in tandem with the prime minister, but I guess that's not what happened.
I think he was
So
just like a loose end that they didn't really know how to deal with at the end of the story, which
mm,
is it's not the worst thing to happen. It's fine, I guess. It's just like what you get from that is really like maybe the most poignant part of his whole storyline is how Dan, who looks up to him so much, is ultimately rejected and betrayed by him.
right,
So
maybe.
like, and that's kind of like, okay, the Dans of the world don't believe the hype, kind of, I
Right,
think might
right.
be the only message we're supposed to really take from his
Maybe.
whole story arc, and the fact that he's such a dick to Camila.
True.
But yeah, but we're getting way out in front of but yeah, I agree that is one of the more interesting and sort of like dissatisfying, unsatisfying parts
Right.
of the
Like, I
story.
mean, there were good things about it, which I was sort of surprised that they didn't use it a little bit more effectively. So that was one thing. But this is the sort of background. You're hearing this radio host commentary as Dan is sort of driving through, and we're sort of seeing
We
the
don't learn Dan's name until I don't know 2/3 of the way through the movie. I
yeah,
feel like
no,
I
yeah,
just
we
was
don't.
just calling him Security Dad for half of the film.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's Papa, security Papa. That's like
Sure.
Um, but he's in this security position. This is Peacock Island, which is an elitist community. That,
You're
I guess
using the radio DJ's language there, but I mean you can tell that it's very
well,
very fancy.
it's fancy. It's got peacocks. It's got like gates. It's got security. The houses that they go by are very well to do. And even the sort of setting of everything is very well to do. And I mean, this is very tropey how they set it up. So even all the characters that they have, um, sort of that you're learning about here, from like the owner or the whatever he is of the golf course, and the clientele of the golf course, plus the people in the community, aside from the people that are working there, they feel, like they're in a pretty posh area. um and then, we're introduced to Dan and Andre. And, Andre is kind of like this kid that lives here in the community, and he's very like into his phone, disassociated, generally. I think honestly one of the funnier scenes is the first interaction that we know of between Andre and Dan, where Andre's like biking through the community on his phone, and Dan's like, "Don't text and bike," and he's like, I'm watching a video." um so, he's just kind of Andre's kind of in his own little like world, and doesn't really know stuff around. And he's got his little sister, who's a little baby, and he lives with his like single mom. And but they're well to do enough that they have like a nanny, though she's not full time, I guess. But Um, we see the sort of main characters in this pretty quickly overall.
Yeah. We
And it's
meet
not a huge cast, honestly, like other than
no.
the zombie extras.
I mean, there are a few. There's like a dozen people with lines, I guess, but most of them are not in the movie for very long. Really, it's Andre and Dan for the most part, and then there's a baby, Annie, does not seem to have a credit. I'm not sure
And
why.
there is, we cannot forget, Dan's daughter, Pat. And
Yeah,
we see a little bit of her at the beginning when he's driving her to work.
she doesn't get a huge amount of lines either.
No, not a huge amount of lines, but she's present. And we have, like, I think you get a good sense of Dan just in these little interactions. Like he's
Mostly
there,
in in the media that he's consuming, and then you get some scenes of him going to his like survivalist house after
right?
work, his first day of work. But yeah, you. What's the most surprising thing about Dan is obviously his hair,
Yeah.
because he has that hat on most of the time. You're like, oh, okay, this guy's kind of like, and then he takes off his hat and he's just got like all this hair everywhere. And you're
Yep.
like, what? Security dad, you have an unexpected amount of hair.
Yeah, I know. And it's a lot.
Uh, yeah. So we're trying to like figure, we know that something's about to go down. We've already seen the biohazard stuff happen in the very beginning. You have some scenes of rich people coming to try out the golf course that is now green despite the snow. And we're starting to see some signs of weirdness too, like, or at least there are clips of when the rich guy Marcel hits a ball in the hole, you go down into the ground and see the molecules like spreading and getting into the drinking water and everything.
Hmm.
So
Then
you're
they
like,
do
oh,
and
what's
they do
happening?
follow that, a little bit down the line when we see this, like, kind of, I don't even know what he's supposed to be. The sort of guy talking to his lady friend.
Like,
Um,
yeah, he came out of nowhere.
yeah, I don't really know what he was supposed to be, but like
I think
anyway,
he's
so
just like he's a stand-in for a rich guy who lives in this community who that's his mistress. Maybe he's going to her house.
maybe I don't know.
Yeah, but he's like in a makeup chair talking to her, which I don't know. Yeah, we don't really know anything about this guy except that he is talking in a lascivious way with this woman while there are people around him, and he doesn't care because he's
Yep.
rich. And then he goes to the store. I like the way
Which by
that
the
they
way,
do the grocery store with all the water everywhere. Like water is omnipresent. The way that they're spritzing everything, and I thought those were unsettling and cool scenes.
right, but the most surprising to me is that this guy was actually going to go and do his shopping himself,
Yeah, I guess.
given what we just learned about him. But cool, cool. And I did like this scene where it's like you see the strawberries, you see, and there it's like this nice little contrast because this is like an organic grocery store and they're talking about all the healthy benefits of vegetables, like that's sort of like a running commentary in the background. And then he's having a moment where he's clearly been infected by whatever this is. And I thought that that was kind of a nice transition into showing where this movie is going. And so I thought that that whole scene and the way it was shot was pretty smart.
Yeah, so that is definitely what he's doing is he's the agent to show the audience how infection happens because it happens two other times after we see it happen to him. So because of how he goes through it, like when we see the mother have a dizzy spell later, we're like, oh, uh-oh. When we see Dan later on have a dizzy spell, we're like, oh, okay. So this guy gets dizzy in the grocery store, which is your first clue. He's just like, oh, well, that was weird. But then like goes on with his day and goes to his girlfriend's house. But then the next time he has a spell, it's turned. He's turned. Also,
Yep.
his teeth have gotten really green and slimy, which is
Yeah.
another interesting sort of effect. I liked that. Some of the grass stuff, the dog was
Mm.
not super convincing to me later on.
Yeah, and I mean, it's pretty fast, this transition, once I guess it reaches a certain level. Um, but it's you know, it's
I mean, from him drinking a glass of water in the makeup chair, which is what his source of infection was, You don't get the sense that it's more than an hour before he
Yeah,
turns.
no. And then later on it's a lot more swift, or it feels like it's a little bit more swift. But although I guess they stay pretty consistent in this.
It's I think a
Um
bite maybe does it even faster because
yeah.
the protocol ladies turn extremely quickly.
Yeah. So anyway, he takes out his mistress really fast, and then they show, I mean, like they show that he like gets into the tub with her, and then they're both like kind of like chilling in the light. And they show her eyes turn really quickly, so she's just had a big chunk taken out of her neck.
Yeah.
And look, I get that the effect here, like with him like attacking her, getting in the tub, and then like spitting out what he had just chewed, like he's not, they're not doing this to like eat brains, but they're doing this to basically just infect as many people as possible. So I thought that was pretty well done. And then you know what's going to happen, or you can kind of predict what's going to happen with others, and Andre and his mom especially. um
Yeah, especially when they start showing, yeah, but basically it's in the tap water. And so they have some nice, there's been source of tension for Andre also that his mother came home from work late the day before, so he had to watch his little sister, and he's not very good at it.
no.
Um, like yeah, he's frustrated by her crying. She's a little baby. He doesn't know how to make a bottle necessarily. He doesn't know how to, definitely doesn't know how to do a diaper. Good grief.
Yeah.
And the next day, his mother goes to work. Camila couldn't get onto the island. Not entirely clear, other than just like elitist assholes. And why couldn't this woman get onto the island? Why was she pulled off the bus with another woman? But
Yeah.
Camila doesn't make it onto the island, and we mostly see that from Dan inside Dan's truck where he's talking to Patricia, his
Right.
daughter.
Right. And I mean, look, this is actually there is like a theme in Quebec, that, an anti-immigration theme, and they've got a lot of things in place to protect their culture. So there's the rule about language. So if you go into any store in Quebec, it's like you have to speak French and you have to say hello, and that they are legally required to speak French to you. And if they speak English, that's fine, but they have to speak French first. So, and some of that specific theme comes out when Camila is talking to the radio host too, because he's like, "Oh, are you a real Quebecer?" And so that particular theme, I think, is being played out when she's on the bridge, where it isn't clear, as you said. It's like they just don't seem to want to let her on, and she's with like another friend too, right?
Yeah,
Like it,
you could get the impression that it was the friend who maybe doesn't have the right to be on Peacock Island, but Camila clearly, well, we
yeah,
assume she does because she works for Andre's mom. And her not being able to be there is sets up a lot of what's going to
right,
happen with Andre for the rest of this movie, even though like the actual zombie outbreak doesn't really happen until much later or a little later in the day.
right.
It is still
Um,
daylight when things really go sideways, but it's later. It's late in the day. So she's not able to come to work, so Andre has to stay home from school, which his mom is fine with, in order to look after his little sister. And yeah, so there's commentary here, obviously, that this woman it works too much in quotes, and apparently just doesn't like. There was a scene where Andre was looking at his phone. The baby's pulling the TV off
I know.
the entertainment center, and he's more upset that she could have broken the TV as opposed to getting killed, and
Right.
it's foreshadowing for what happens later to his mom. But uh, like clearly the mother is falling short on on her responsibilities. So says the filmmaker in these scenes, and Andre is like woefully inadequate also in trying to raise Annie. But luckily, Annie is the cutest little baby in the
She's pretty
world.
cute.
Very smiley, and so she can do no wrong. We're also established here in some of these scenes around in these scenes, maybe when the mom comes home and she's on her like elliptical, she's telling Andre to make a bottle, but not to use tap water, to use bottled water.
No, he does
So,
rinse out the bottle with the tap water, so I was like, it's
oh, he
she's
did. I
expected
missed
anyway,
that.
but whatevs.
And
Uh,
he's only drinking Coke. Like he's like a typical teenager. He only eats Coke, and drinks Coke and eats potato chips.
Mhm.
So he is he's safe. However, mom is making kale smoothies on the regular.
Yep. Which is actually a pretty funny little callback later with Andre,
Yeah.
which I love.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting because like, look, she's working pretty hard. It sounds like it. It's like I will say that the fact that Camila couldn't make it to the island and she doesn't come back to the house because so Andre can go to school, and she's like, "Oh, did you really want to go to school?"
Yeah.
And not the best actions here, from a parenting point of view. But you know, she's also a single mom, so maybe there's some stuff happening. So, you know, there's this tension between the two of them, but you also have like her doing these like things that are supposed to be healthy, and she's talking about getting the toxins out of her body. And there, I mean, she and Andre have these little sort of back and forth, and he's like, well, maybe you should just relax. And so, um, you know,
Yeah.
before her downfall, so to speak, she's basically doing all the things that she's trying to do to stay quote unquote healthy. But given that she's into these like tap water infection or whatever it might be, it's sort of the polar opposite that happens.
Yeah. For
Um,
all of his like being disassociated, Andre, it feels like here, at least in the dialogue, is like, mom, I just want to spend more time with you. If you weren't always at work or always working out, maybe we could hang out more and it would be cool. And maybe you should relax and take care of yourself. And, that would be great. But the maybe this is where I feel like here it doesn't really feel like he has a relationship with his mother. And maybe
mm-mm.
that plays through because he's not super disturbed by what happens to her later. He kind of
He
just takes
is,
it all in stride.
but not enough. And I do think that some of this is like trying to show why he's dissociated because he's really not getting a lot from her. And so I think that may could have potentially been written a little bit better, but like you do see him trying to connect with her and getting pretty much soundly rebuffed.
Mm.
So anyway, we see her sort of go through the trajectory of the infection.
Yeah, she has
And
a
I
dizzy
actually
spell and then she's passed out a little
right.
later
And
on the
I
couch.
actually thought this was really fun. Funny, like they played the humor of this really well. Like as Andre's just like, "Did you eat too much kale or something like that?" And like she's kind of chasing him around the counter. Um, and I thought that this was like just the choreography of the scene was really well done because she like couldn't get to him. And it made sense. It didn't feel fake on that level, or I didn't feel like it did. Didn't
He
feel
didn't really
forced.
feel like he was in peril either. Like it was almost
Well,
the movie was pulling its punches a little bit in this scene.
it was, but like I also think that it took him a minute to sort of get, and even later when, you know, she's chasing him out of the house, he's just like, "What's wrong with you?" Like he's just really a little like he takes it in stride, maybe a little too much, but
Yeah,
also
he's throwing quips at her while she's chasing him into the street.
right.
Like, do you need some Xanax? Uh, he's yelling at her, and it's not like, "Mommy, don't hurt me." It's just like
Yep.
jokes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's part of. I don't know. Maybe the movie wouldn't have felt. Maybe it would have felt too dark if
Yeah.
we really looked at this with a close lens of a mother trying to kill her son. I mean, we've
Yeah.
done that whole movie with Nicolas Cage.
Well, it's pretty damn dark when you know, she's chasing him across the street and she gets taken out by Dan.
Not a bad effect there.
Yeah, pretty good.
She doesn't get completely killed by that though. She's just like got a one very broken leg. And Dan is like, "Oh, you're the kid with the video on his bike,
Mhm.
and go home and lock the door." And just kind of drives off while a bunch of zombies are running around the corner. And Andre's left to drag his mom inside the garage, which he does. Like this is, I guess, where he's still committed to her.
Mhm.
He's trying to figure out how he can help her. So he does drag her into the garage and then kind of like, locks down the house.
But it's interesting because Dan's just like, she's done, she's infected, like leave her alone, you know? And then we see later what he does with his own daughter.
Yeah.
Um, so I just thought, you know, so Andre's trying to take care of business. He's taking care of his little sister, though, again, the little sister's crying and causing all this noise. And I don't think suffocating with her with all the stuffed animals
That
would
was
help.
messed up. Yeah,
Yeah, I did
I'm
not
glad
like
that
that.
they didn't dwell on that scene too long either.
Mm,
Although, yeah, that's not the way to do that. I don't know. Like he
no,
could have moved her to a room that wasn't close to the front door, I guess, you
right.
know.
So I mean, I think they're trying to show that the kid just doesn't know what to do and doesn't have necessarily the best brothering skills, but in any case, she's okay, folks. She's okay.
I mean, after this, he gets better at
Yeah.
dealing with her, where she becomes his priority as opposed to this
Mhm.
nuisance. Because the next morning he's like, "Oh, you hungry? You want a bottle?" And he like goes and makes her a bottle, you know, no problem. We don't get any more diaper changing scenes, so in theory,
He
he's
just keeps
still
doing it.
having to do that, but we're not having to watch it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So and mom is now like he locked in the shower and gets under, or locked in the bathroom and gets under the shower and is doing this thing that the zombies do, which is either soak up sunlight or sit in water. And he lures her with kale into the living room where the TV destroys her. We've
Yep.
also had some scenes of at the golf club where this guy Michelle, who we don't really ever know his name, who
Mm-mm.
was like apparently in charge of the molecule spreading at the golf course and his part of Biotech M, um, has been doing this ride along with these rich folk. They get taken out and turned into zombies. Patricia runs into, she's a caddy at the golf club, Dan's daughter, and she runs into the cart garage. We feel like she might be safe, but then you hear a growl.
And by the time, I mean, they don't, by the time Dan gets to her, she's infected. And so he's
Mm.
just like carting her around the rest of the movie.
Yeah,
Um,
we got to see him use his combat shovel
hmm
pretty well. He's kind of a badass, is Dan. But we yeah, that was too bad. And this guy Michelle is like in the clubhouse. We don't really see much of him until later in the film, like after Dan and Andre have hooked up again. Um, and Andre makes this decision the following day to like his phone runs out of batteries. I think that might be the main reason. He's
yeah.
like, I gotta get out of here, and he makes a run for it out of the house. And he doesn't get. I mean, he gets far, but he is surrounded by the time he gets
Yep.
to this grocery store. And
Yep.
Dan suddenly is there and pulls him inside. And they only spend one night there. I think because they're trying to figure out what's happening. Um, you know, I don't. I'm not remembering exactly when the what the course of events is here, but Dan says, "Hey, you know what? We're gonna go live in the woods, and you could come too." I don't know if that happens in the grocery store or later. Do you recall?
I think it was in the grocery store, and he said he's been prepping for it for a while. And he goes with, with you and with Patricia, who's clearly infected.
Yeah,
So that doesn't, I don't know how that, and the part of the getting her safely to different places is pretty funny because he's got like a basket over her head and
yeah.
everything.
She reacts weirdly. Like sometimes she's super docile,
Yep.
sometimes she gets very aggressive, and they just kind of. By the end, she's just like a piece of furniture. They're moving around for the
hmm
most part.
But he's Andre's pretty good with he and Dan have an interesting bond that is built during their sort of escapades together. And then the Michelle guy back at the golf course, he is in contact with, whoever the higher ups or the damage control of this company are. And so he's avoided everybody at this golf course. Like he's, taken out one of the people that he was supposed to be escorting who had been infected. And basically is like, you have to come and rescue me. Um, and we need to do damage control. And they say, oh, we're gonna do cleanup or whatever it is that they
The
say.
protocol.
The protocol. And so it isn't clear to me why Dan and Andre are like looking. I mean, they figure out that it's in the water, but it isn't clear to me like are they looking to like stop the source of this? Like it wasn't that part wasn't incredibly clear to me what their goal was.
Yeah, like this is when Dan makes his first call to his only, I guess, call to the radio disc jockey who at first is like, "Hey, it's always nice to talk to a fan." And then he's like, look, wait, you're on the island and your daughter's infected. Why would anybody come
Yep.
and help you? Like, you're you are a danger to the rest of us. And Dan is like, oh, damn it.
Yeah, and I mean,
uh,
I think Dan just wants to go and hide, and Andre wants to find the source and
that's
basically
that is
like,
what they basically say.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Because for some reason, Andre is realizing that unless they know exactly how infection spreads, they have no chance of getting out legitimately. He still
right,
thinks that somebody will help them out if they can explain how it all works.
right,
But unfortunately, Patrick No, the DJ, somehow seems to persuade the government by the end of the film
right,
that they need to go in and do a full scale assault. So this one radio disc jockey is responsible for kind of how
all of
things
it.
break down at the end.
Yeah.
That and it seems like it's part of the New World Order. But yeah, Michelle, the inventor guy, is told to like basically they're going to cover their tracks and somebody's going to come in and get him. Maybe we're not
Right.
sure, but then somebody does come to get them. While Dan and Andre abandon the grocery store, I'm not sure why they would, but they feel unsafe or they feel like they have to accomplish more, and they go to the water treatment plant because Dan's actually pretty insightful. He figures out that it's the water,
Mm-hmm.
and so he's like, okay, because it's the water, we're going to go to the water treatment plant. So they do go there, but it's kind of a red herring. I don't think that they really learn too much except for the fact that his daughter's arm falls off
Yep.
and that they like to be underwater, the zombies.
Yep.
And
And
and then Andre finds Patricia's phone and is able to. I'm not sure, like the phone, like he uses it at the end of the film to make his little like
videos
video,
and his stuff, yeah.
but otherwise it's not that useful.
Mm.
And Dan keeps yelling at him anytime he has a phone in his hand because there's also a
Right.
subplot here that Dan doesn't know how phones work and
Yes.
Andre has to show him and is like there's a flashlight on this phone and we're like all right, it's 2021 when this movie was made. I don't think this is a huge leap for anybody, but maybe for Luddites like Dan.
In while they are sort of trying to do the water plan and eventually leading them to the golf course. In the meantime, the quote unquote protocol is these twin assassin like cleaner women.
Which
Uh
who are played by one person.
yep.
I mean, that's
Um
probably not surprising.
no. But they are basically cleaning up around the golf course, and they have a bunch of stuff that they're doing. I guess they're trying to like just silence everybody, and that's their intention. So we see it's not just the infected that they're trying to get rid of, but they're trying to like just clean up every single um person so that there's no witnesses left to
Yeah,
see.
certainly by the end of the film, they want to infect everybody,
Mm-hmm.
not only so that they'll be killed by presumed by the government because they know that,
Yeah.
that step is coming down the road.
Yeah.
But they try to infect. They do infect everybody, like babies, children.
Right. And
Dan,
then they
I
also
Dan, I
they're
guess gets
also
infected first.
like loosing these sort of like fungicide or something that's gonna like kill the virus, which doesn't it seems to work in different ways for different people. I guess it's if you haven't gotten too far down the line, it seems to reverse it. At
Yeah,
least it did for the baby and for Dan.
not right away, but yeah, it does
Yeah.
eventually. And you know what? Nobody else other than Dan. Yeah, they're not when they step on that sphere in that struggle toward the end. The two blondes were in the smoke too, but they both got infected. So it's kind
Yeah,
of weird.
that was weird. I don't know.
Andre never gets infected actually, and Annie reverts. And Annie, they feed her those little green globs to infect her, and that's just I don't know.
Terrible.
It's messed up. I mean, hopefully those are really yummy for whoever played Annie, and they were just like yummy
Little gummy
little
thing.
gummies. Yeah. That scene where she's just sitting in the kitchen on the kitchen floor. The kitchen is like there's carcasses of animals, like
I
for
know, and
cooking.
she's just in the middle of the floor.
She's sitting on the floor just eating carrots off the floor. I was like, yep, that checks out.
Yep. Yep. And Andre is really like, worried about her and, like,
He is, but like that chair fort he made for her to stay in was not
was
that
not
good.
very secure. No, no. And so, um, you know, ultimately Michel is sort of the victim of his own protocol, because they want to get rid of him too, because they really don't want anybody to talk.
His character is kind of unnecessary for this
Yeah, I
film.
just didn't know. I thought that was gonna do something else. I thought they were setting him up maybe to take the fall, where it was gonna like somehow be framed around him, but that's not
Yeah,
what happened.
they just he's there to, I guess, represent biotech M on the ground, to be the one that the rich people are saying, "Hey, thanks for this solution for our golfing needs." But it
Yeah,
doesn't really. Then he's like there, he survives, he's killed off by his own people. And maybe it's just to show that they're merciless,
yeah.
but like infecting a baby on purpose also really gets that message across.
Yep.
So yeah, I feel like that was kind of a wasted opportunity to they also are able to show that it's a conspiracy through his phone call.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, yeah, I kind of wanted a little more out of him, also to know his
Yeah.
name at any point, because
Yeah.
I was just calling him inventor.
And then the other part that didn't totally like, I guess maybe the how Camila knows Andre is still on the island and it's okay, is that he
Yeah,
sends out this video, but like the baby's infected, and so it was just kind of like, the baby and, Andre and the baby are like fleeing the government cleaners that they then send in, because he sees that they're taking out everybody, and indeed they even take out Dan, who is okay actually. At
yeah,
that point.
that was kind of sad,
It was. I
obviously.
was hoping that they'd have a little reunion, and that's not what happened. And then randomly, Andre ends up by the water, and by happenstance, Camila ends up right there to pick him
I
up.
mean, we could guess that they'd gotten in touch with each other by phone, maybe.
Maybe, but anyway, and it's sort of like this. It sort of ends in it. We see the end scene that we had mentioned before with, um, the radio commentator sort of watching the results of his work with the prime minister, and that it's all like a whatever an M funded thing. But Andre, like, you know his sister's okay, he goes off with Camila, but for whatever reason he's still carrying that arm. I thought he was carrying it as evidence, right? And no, he just tosses it in the
Why
ocean.
did he pick up the arm
I don't know. Like,
after, like, he'd given it to Dan, they traded an arm for a shovel, and then he must go back into that room and to find the phone. He went to find the phone, and maybe he thought he needed the arm to reprogram the
okay,
fingerprint, but
maybe
he could have just reprogrammed it and moved on with his day instead of
carrying the arm. But I
carrying the
thought,
arm
I
around.
mean, I really thought that's what it was going to be, was that he was like bringing it as evidence, and then he tosses in the ocean, and then, we see where that they left room for a sequel. So, you know,
I
um,
don't think this film's going to get a sequel. I just have
I
a
don't think
sneaking
so either.
suspicion.
I don't think
Um,
so either.
it's, like, talking back through it, there's not a whole lot here. I would say though that the effects were decent. There were some where they were actually pretty bad, but it was, I forgive
Look,
it because of the
I,
kind of movie it is.
yeah, and I mean, oh, one thing I will say, like, I couldn't find a version of it that was just wasn't overdubbed with English.
Hmm.
So that annoyed me, because I would much prefer to watch subtitles than to.
Oh, I watched it in French
Oh, weird. I tried to, and it wouldn't let me do, like, it was like, oh, dubbed in English, and I'm like, great. So anyway, that was
because,
annoying.
yeah, I
But
and yeah, Quebecois French is always so weird sounding to my
oh,
ears.
it's very different. But that I don't know. I look, I think if it's like you just want something kind of like a ridiculous light thing, I think it'll do the job, but I agree. There's not anything like super exciting or new in this film.
Because
Um,
it's not actually scary at any point. It's
oh.
just disappointing.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating in a few places. It's like, oh my God, is the baby gonna be in trouble? Is the baby gonna get hurt? They don't
Yeah.
really, the having a baby in a zombie movie is always like a point of fraught tension, and they use it a little bit, but generally they kind of stay away from that line of scariness.
Honestly, the scariest part of this movie is when the TV almost falls on the baby.
Yeah,
It's like it's or when he almost suffocates the baby, like it has nothing to do with the zombies. I was thinking that at a few points in this, the baby's like in a car that's supposedly surrounded by them, and I don't know if they like were just doing sort of like tricky photography, and hopefully the zombie actors were just making goo goo faces at the baby actor in this, but hopefully she doesn't suffer any long-term trauma from
yeah,
filming this film. Um, but but yeah, I mean it's not like a heavy film, it's a light film, but I don't it's not the worst thing I've ever seen, certainly.
that's that's true.
But I
Yeah,
don't know that it
it's
has a ton to add.
yeah. No, it was entertaining enough. But I wouldn't. Yeah, I think it's the 4.9 that it has on IMDb. It's about what it is. It's about a four. It's about a
Yeah.
5 out of 10. Did you like the
No.
zombie makeup?
I thought it was pretty good. I mean, they do they lean a little too much on the green eye effect. But I thought that a couple of the ones, especially in the plant when they have the guy kind of overtaken, that guy was looked pretty good.
The water treatment plant guy had a really
Yeah.
good jaw. Yeah,
Yeah, he had a good jaw. And there were a few. I didn't think that the dog effects were very good. So, but I don't think it was, again, it was fine. And I think that they did a lot with what they had, so I have to applaud that.
yeah,
So,
yeah. They needed a lot of effects for this film, and they clearly didn't have a ton of money, and it shows sometimes. But but it does also work very well, especially when they use practical effects over their CGI budget. Next time, I think we're going to France um, to talk about another film in a language that we are not completely fluent in. But that will be next week or next time on Reanimated. In the meantime, if you want to let us know if you saw Brain Freeze and thought that it was the best thing ever, let us know. You can email us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. We're on Twitter, reanimatedpcast, and our show notes. Well, not really our show notes. All of our episodes have been on reanimated.podbean.com. So have a look at them there and listen. So, HA, I hope you continue to recover.
oh, I will. It's all good. It's the journey. It's the COVID journey now.
What a fun
So
journey it is.
it is. It's what it is. So, improvement is good, though. Improvement is good. Cannot complain. And until next time, ciao.
Alrighty. Bye for now.